You know what's funny? People always think they know you, like really know you, just because they see your Instagram stories or the occasional post about a date night. But trust me, there's so much more going on behind the scenes that you'd never guess. Anyway, I'm Whitney. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Indiana, one of those states where everything feels the same no matter where you go. Cornfields, Walmarts, and drive-thrus. That's my life in a nutshell. So, I've been married to Chad for 5 years now. He's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and trash my husband or anything. He's a good guy, stable, reliable, works as a manager at a hardware store. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, kind of. The thing is, though, Chad wasn't exactly my dream guy when we got together. I'd just gotten out of this whirlwind situationship with a guy I was crazy about, but he didn't want to settle down, and honestly, my self-esteem couldn't handle waiting around for him to figure it out. So when Chad came along, I guess he felt safe. He wasn't exciting or super romantic, but he wanted to get married, and at the time, that felt like enough. Our life together has been fine. We live in a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of town. It's not much, but it's cozy. We don't have kids, which is something I'm pretty firm on. I've worked way too hard to keep my body in shape since college to just throw it all away on stretch marks and sleepless nights. I know that sounds selfish, but I don't care. It's my body, my choice, right? Chad's fine with it, or at least he pretends to be. Honestly, I think he just likes avoiding responsibility. The thing is, though, I've always had this image of what my life would look like, and let's just say it doesn't include sweating over grocery budgets or watching my husband play Call of Duty until midnight. Don't get me wrong, I like Chad. He's goofy and sweet, and he'll do this dumb little dance to make me laugh when I'm in a bad mood. But sometimes I look at him and just wonder if this is it. Like, is this really my life now? Married to a guy who thinks going to Applebee's is a big night out? So, anyway, that's where the gym comes in. I've always been into fitness, but in the last year, I've taken it to another level. I'm talking 6 a.m. workouts, protein shakes, tracking my macros, the whole deal. At first, Chad was supportive, but I could tell it bugged him when I started getting more attention, especially online. I'd post a gym selfie, and there'd always be a few comments from guys I went to high school with, telling me how great I looked, or asking what my secret was. Chad would joke about it, but I could see the insecurity creeping in. And then there's Josh, my gym partner. He's 29, ridiculously fit, and drives a brand new truck that probably costs more than our rent for the year. We met a few months ago when he spotted me on the bench press and we just kind of clicked. He's funny, confident, and he knows exactly how to make me feel good about myself. He'll say things like, "You don't look a day over 25," or "You've got the kind of discipline most people dream of." Stuff Chad hasn't said to me in years, if ever. At first, it was innocent. Just two people working out together and pushing each other to be better. But then we started texting. Nothing crazy, just memes, workout tips, stuff like that. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't make me feel a little giddy. I started looking forward to my gym sessions in a way I hadn't before. I'd spend extra time picking out my outfit or doing my hair before I went, just in case I ran into him. Chad noticed, of course. He's not stupid. He started making comments like, "You spend more time at the gym than you do with me," or "Do you really need to go that late?" I'd brush it off, saying stuff like, "It's the only time I can fit it in," or "I'm just trying to stay healthy for us." But the truth is, I wasn't just going for the workouts anymore. I was going for Josh. I know what you're thinking. I'm married. I shouldn't be acting like this. And you're right. But at the same time, I can't help it. It's like, for the first time in forever, someone is actually seeing me. Not just as a wife or a woman who makes sure the bills are paid and the laundry gets done, but as me, Whitney, a woman who still has a spark, who still turns heads, who's not just another boring married 30-something in the Midwest. Things started to shift a couple of weeks ago when Chad's buddy Tyler joined the same gym. Tyler's one of those guys who's always around, but never really in the spotlight, if that makes sense. He's nice enough, but I wouldn't call us close. Anyway, I didn't think much of it when I saw him there for the first time. I just waved and went about my workout, but then I caught him watching me. Or more specifically, watching me and Josh. I didn't think much of it at first. but now I can't shake this feeling that Tyler might have said something to Chad. He's been acting weird lately, quieter than usual, spending even more time on his games than normal. Last night, I asked if he wanted to watch a movie with me, and he just grunted something about being in the middle of a mission. I shrugged it off, but now I'm wondering if he's piecing things together. I'm not doing anything wrong. Not really. Josh and I are just friends. Okay, maybe we flirt a little, but it's harmless. I'd never actually crossed the line. I love Chad. I do. But is it so bad to want to feel alive again? To feel like more than just someone's wife? You know that feeling when you're walking on thin ice, but you keep telling yourself it's fine because it hasn't cracked yet? That's kind of how I've been feeling lately. Things with Josh haven't gone any further than flirting, but I can tell it's starting to teeter into territory that's messy. And the thing is, I don't even feel bad about it, at least not most of the time. Chad doesn't ask questions about my day, barely even looks up from his games when I walk in the door, and if I'm being honest, I'm starting to resent him for it. So, what if I get a little attention somewhere else? Is that really so awful? The gym is still my safe space, though. My sanctuary. Josh and I have a routine now. We'll meet up, do a couple of sets together, talk about our goals, maybe grab a smoothie after if we're both feeling it. He's funny, you know? Like, really funny. He'll say things like, "You're too cool to be stuck in this boring town." And even though I know it's just talk, I eat it up. I feel like myself again when I'm around him. Not just Chad's wife, just Whitney. Anyway, one day, Tyler showed up at the gym while I was finishing up a session with Josh. Josh had just cracked some joke about my form, and I playfully smacked his arm, laughing a little louder than I should have. That's when Tyler walked over to say hi. I froze for a second, but quickly recovered, giving Tyler my usual fake friendly smile. I introduced him to Josh like it was no big deal, saying, "This is Josh, my workout buddy." Josh gave him a firm handshake, and Tyler just nodded, looking between us like he was trying to figure something out. It wasn't until later that I realized my wedding ring wasn't on. I'd started taking it off before going to the gym because it would dig into my finger during workouts. Or at least that's the excuse I gave myself. Really, I just didn't want to answer any questions from Josh about why I was married, but acting like I wasn't. I don't know if Tyler noticed, but something about his expression told me he did. He didn't say anything, though, and I figured I was safe. But that night, things started to feel off. Chad was in his usual spot, headset on, controller in hand, yelling at his buddies about some mission in whatever game he's addicted to this week. I poured myself a glass of wine and scrolled through Instagram, trying to ignore the creeping guilt that was starting to settle in. Then I heard it. "Wait, what do you mean?" Chad said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I perked up immediately, because Chad doesn't whisper. Ever. He's one of those people who thinks the whole world wants to hear his opinions, whether they're talking to him or not. "No, I don't know who that is," he said. "What guy?" My heart dropped. I set my wine down and moved closer to the living room, trying to hear more. Chad was leaning forward in his chair, his elbows on his knees, listening intently to whoever was on the other end of the line. "Josh?" he repeated, like he was trying to make sense of the name. She didn't say anything about a Josh. That's when I knew. Tyler had said something. My mind raced, trying to figure out what exactly he might have told Chad. Did he mention seeing me with Josh? Did he tell him I wasn't wearing my ring? I tried to stay calm, but my hands were shaking as I stood there, just out of Chad's sight. The conversation ended after a few more whispered comments, and Chad pulled off his headset, sitting there in silence for a minute. I could tell he was stewing, replaying whatever Tyler had told him over and over in his head. Finally, he got up and came into the kitchen, grabbing a soda from the fridge without looking at me. "You good?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," he said flatly. "Why wouldn't I be?" I shrugged. "You just seem quiet tonight." He gave me a tight smile and went back to the living room without another word. That's when I knew I had to get ahead of this. If Tyler was planting seeds of doubt, I needed to make sure I was the one controlling the narrative. The next day, I brought up Josh while Chad was getting ready for work. I casually mentioned that I'd been working out with someone at the gym, trying to make it seem like no big deal. Chad didn't say much at first, just nodded like he was waiting for me to keep talking. His name's Josh, I said, leaning against the bathroom door. He's just a gym buddy. You know, someone to keep me accountable. Chad paused mid-shave, looking at me in the mirror. Why didn't you mention him before? I shrugged, forcing a laugh. I didn't think it was a big deal. I mean, you never really ask about my gym stuff. His jaw tightened, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. Tyler mentioned seeing you with him, he said finally. Said you weren't wearing your ring. I felt my stomach flip, but I kept my face neutral. Oh, come on, I said, rolling my eyes. I take my ring off when I work out because it digs into my finger. You know that? Do I? He shot back, his tone sharper than I expected. Chad, seriously? I said, crossing my arms. You're gonna make this a thing because Tyler's bored and wants to stir up drama? It's not about Tyler, he said, his voice rising. It's about you not telling me about this guy. How long have you been working out with him? I sighed, trying to look exasperated. A couple of months. It's not like I was hiding it, Chad. You're just so busy with your games, you don't even notice half the stuff I do. That's not fair, he said, glaring at me. You could have told me. And you could have asked, I snapped back. But you don't. You never ask how my day was or what's going on in my life. So yeah, maybe I didn't mention Josh, but it's not like you've been paying attention anyway. That shut him up. I could see the guilt settling in, and I knew I'd won. I gave him a little shrug and said, Look, if it bothers you, I'll stop working out with him. But honestly, Chad, I just wish you'd care about my life the way he does. That last part was a lie, of course. Josh didn't know anything about my life outside the gym. But Chad didn't need to know that. As far as he was concerned, this was his fault for not being a better husband. It started like most of our arguments do, Chad stewing silently while I went about my business, thinking I'd diffused the situation. After our little spat about Josh, I figured I'd played my cards right. Chad seemed to drop it, but he wasn't quite the same. He'd give me these long, searching looks when he thought I wasn't paying attention, like he was trying to work out a puzzle in his head. But whenever I asked if he was okay, he'd just shrug it off and say he was fine. I thought I was in the clear. I mean, sure, Tyler had planted a seed of doubt, but now Chad knew about Josh. I'd framed it like I was upfront about the whole thing, and Chad's suspicions were just his insecurities playing tricks on him. Men are so easy to manipulate when you know which buttons to press. All I had to do was make him feel guilty for not being more involved in my life, and bam, the issue was all but swept under the rug. Or so I thought. Josh, on the other hand, was getting bolder. He started complimenting me more, lingering a little longer after our workouts, and one night he casually suggested we grab dinner. At first I hesitated. Not because I felt guilty. I'd long since convinced myself that this was harmless, but because I knew how it might look. Still, when Josh smiled at me with that easy confidence of his and said, "Come on, it's just dinner," I couldn't resist. I told myself it was no big deal, but dinner turned into a late night. After the meal, Josh asked if I wanted to come back to his place. "I've got some wine," he said with a grin, and before I could stop myself, I said yes. His place was exactly what you'd expect, sleek, modern, spotless. The kind of place Chad and I could never afford. I didn't even think about Chad as I followed Josh to the couch. One glass of wine turned into two, and before I knew it, one thing led to another. I didn't get home until almost 11 p.m. I'd lost track of time completely, and when I finally checked my phone, I saw 3 missed calls and a couple of texts from Chad. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the feeling aside. I told myself he was just being dramatic. He didn't need to know where I was or what I was doing. When I walked through the door, he was sitting on the couch, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice low and clipped. "I told you, I was at the gym," I said, dropping my bag by the door and avoiding his gaze. "Until 11 at night?" He stood up, towering over me, his eyes blazing. "Don't lie to me, Whitney." "I'm not lying," I snapped, my voice rising defensively. "I stayed late to stretch. What's the big deal?" "The big deal," he said, his voice shaking now, "is that you've been acting shady as hell for weeks, and now you're coming home with a hickey on your neck." I froze. I'd forgotten about that. I instinctively touched my neck trying to cover it, but it was too late. You're being ridiculous, I said, my voice shaky. It's not what you think. Don't you dare gaslight me, Chad roared, slamming his hand on the coffee table. Do you think I'm stupid? Who is he? Josh, is it him? Chad, stop, I said, my heart racing. You're blowing this way out of proportion. He laughed bitterly, his hands running through his hair. Out of proportion? Are you kidding me? You've been lying to me for months, Whitney. I didn't want to believe it, but now it all makes sense. I put up with so much crap from you, but this is too far. His words stung, but I refused to back down. You're not perfect either, Chad, I shot back. You ignore me, you don't make me feel special, and you spend more time with your stupid games than you do with me. Maybe, if you actually cared about our marriage, I wouldn't have to look for attention somewhere else. That was the wrong thing to say. He grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the room, slamming the bedroom door behind him. Furious, I grabbed my keys and left, not even bothering to tell him where I was going. I called my best friend, but she didn't answer. Then I tried my mom. No luck there either. Desperate and shaking, I called Josh. Hey, I said, my voice breaking as soon as he answered. Can I come over? I need to get out of here. Of course, he said, his voice full of concern. Come over, we'll talk. When I got to Josh's place, I broke down completely, sobbing as I told him everything, or at least my version of it. I painted Chad as distant, inattentive, and emotionally unavailable. I didn't tell Josh how I'd manipulated Chad or how I'd been lying for months. Josh listened quietly, his expression growing darker with every word. When I finished, he shook his head. You're married? He said, his voice cold. You didn't think that was something I should know? I'm sorry, I said, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't mean for this to happen. Josh laughed bitterly. Didn't mean for what to happen? For you to cheat on your husband? For me to sleep with a married woman? What else haven't you told me, Whitney? I tried to explain, but Josh cut me off. You're a horrible person, you know that? You lied to me, you lied to your husband, and now you're sitting here crying like you're the victim. Do you even hear yourself? I couldn't speak. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd convinced myself that I was justified, that I wasn't really doing anything wrong. But hearing it from Josh, someone I thought cared about me, was like a slap in the face. You should leave, Josh said, his voice flat. Go home and figure out your mess. Try to save your marriage, if that's even possible, but don't think for a second that I'm going to be part of this anymore. I left Josh's place feeling completely shattered. When I got home the next morning, Chad was sitting at the kitchen table, his face pale and drawn. He didn't even look at me as I walked in. I didn't sleep, he said quietly. I was up all night, thinking about everything, and I need to know, Whitney, did you ever love me? Of course I did, I said quickly. Then, without thinking, I added, I do. Chad's face crumpled, and for the first time in years, I saw him cry. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. That's it, isn't it? He said. That's why you never wanted kids. You never really wanted a life with me. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to comfort him, to make him feel better, but I knew it wouldn't matter. He saw right through me. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red and swollen. We're getting a divorce, he said firmly. No, I said quickly. We can figure this out. We can go to therapy. There's nothing to figure out, he interrupted. You cheated on me. You lied to me. You made me feel like I wasn't enough, and now I know I never was. This is over, Whitney. I tried to argue, but deep down, I knew he was right. There was no coming back from this. I destroyed our marriage, and now I had to live with the consequences. I used to think divorces only happened to people who hated each other. Couples who fought every day, threw insults like daggers, and couldn't stand to be in the same room. But when Chad and I finalized ours, it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was heavy, silent. Like we were both standing on opposite sides of a bridge that I'd set on fire, watching it collapse between us. The process was brutal. I won't lie, I tried to fight for as much as I could in the divorce. I thought if I could at least get some financial security out of it, I could convince myself that things weren't so bad. But Chad wasn't having it. He hired a good lawyer, one I definitely couldn't afford to match, and they came after me with receipts, my affair, my lies, everything. In the end, I walked away with the bare minimum. Half of the money in our joint account, my car, and a box of memories I'd rather not look at again. Chad kept the apartment, the furniture, and, most importantly, his dignity. I told myself I didn't care. I even convinced myself for a while that I'd come out of this better off. I was free, right? Free to live my life however I wanted, without the constraints of marriage holding me back. But the reality hit me like a freight train a few months later. I wasn't free. I was alone. Completely, utterly, suffocatingly alone. Josh ghosted me not long after our big blow-up. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. After I confessed everything, he told me I wasn't the person he thought I was, and that he couldn't see a future with someone who'd lie and cheat so easily. I tried to argue that I wasn't really like that, but he didn't buy it. Honestly, I don't think I bought it either. Deep down, I knew he was right. I stopped going to the gym after that. The thought of walking in there and seeing all the people who knew me, who'd seen me with Josh, made me feel physically sick. It was like the walls of that place were closing in on me, whispering all my mistakes back to me. So I stayed home instead. At first I told myself I'd work out at home, but the truth is, I didn't have the energy. The weight I'd worked so hard to keep off started creeping back on, and with it came this overwhelming sense of failure. I'd scroll through Instagram late at night, looking at old pictures of myself, of Chad and me when we were still happy. I couldn't help but notice how tired and puffy my face looked now, compared to back then. My confidence, the spark I used to have, it was all gone. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd destroyed my marriage chasing a feeling of being seen, and now I felt more invisible than ever. Meanwhile, Chad wasn't doing much better. I heard through the grapevine that he'd taken some time off work to focus on himself, but the truth was, he was just trying to pick up the pieces of his life. Tyler told me once, before I blocked him, that Chad was going to therapy and wasn't dating anyone. The thought of him sitting in some sterile office, pouring his heart out to a stranger, broke me in a way I didn't think was possible. I'd hurt him so deeply, and now he was left to carry the weight of it while I tried to pretend I was okay. I started drinking more than I should have, telling myself it was just a way to relax. But those 2 glasses of wine turned into 3, then 4, and before long, I was waking up with a headache almost every morning. I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at me. My once toned arms were soft now, my stomach wasn't as flat, and my skin had lost its glow. I looked tired, worn out, used up. I tried dating, but every man I met felt like a pale shadow of what I thought I deserved. The truth was, I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. I just knew that no one I met seemed to measure up to the version of Chad I'd started building in my head. The good memories, the ones I'd pushed aside while I was chasing Josh, kept bubbling to the surface. I'd remember the way Chad used to bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, or the goofy dances he'd do when he thought no one was watching. I didn't deserve those memories, but they haunted me anyway. One night, about a year after the divorce was finalized, I saw Chad at a grocery store. He didn't notice me at first. He was in the produce section, carefully picking out avocados like he always used to do. I stood there, frozen, watching him. He looked different. Thinner, maybe, sadder. But there was also something else, a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. I almost went up to him. Almost. But then I saw the way his face lit up when a woman walked over to him, holding a shopping basket. She was pretty, in a simple, understated way, the kind of pretty that doesn't need filters or gym selfies to prove it. She said something that made him laugh, and for a split second, I saw a glimpse of the old Chad. My Chad. But he wasn't mine anymore. I left without buying anything that night. I cried the whole way home. Now I'm 36 years old, single, and completely lost. I thought the divorce would be a reset, a chance to start over, but all it did was leave me stranded in a life I barely recognize. Chad's moved on, or at least he's trying to, and I'm stuck here, replaying every bad decision I've ever made like a broken record. The worst part? I know I did this to myself. I ruined my marriage. I ruined my ex-husband. And in the process, I ruined my own life too. I don't know if Chad will ever truly forgive me. I don't even know if I'll ever forgive myself. But one thing's for sure. I'll never forget the look on his face the night he told me he wanted a divorce. The pain, the anger, the heartbreak, I see it every time I close my eyes. And I know, deep down, that no matter how much time passes, I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life.